Pisces is at the North Node, so spiritual laws apply very heavily. Very heavily. Until we learn how to forgive, there's a lot that we're missing out on. There's many blessings that cannot locate us because it can't pick up the scent of peace. It can't pick up the scent of love. It can't pick up the scent of understanding, which shows that you can handle the blessings that were meant for you. With that spirit of resent and animosity, you're an instrument for division and separation. And division and separation is to work against God. It's to work against the plan of the family, legacy. A dark heart can cause division and separation within the blood, the kith, the kin, that finds its way into forms of curses that moves throughout family. And it starts with that unhealed person. We're trying to work for, according to that South Node Virgo, what we want. Burning the midnight oil, more hours at work, getting ambitious, focused, reading all the books, taking all the classes. But for some reason, certain things seem unattainable. Or like you can't access what you know you're qualified for. You can't access what you know you're the right person for. This could be career, it could be relationship. Let's refer to Venus in this retrograde, relationships and personal values. But what we don't look at, because the lesson is seeing beyond the consciousness of Virgo at the South Node into the consciousness of Pisces, there could be spiritual laws that are active. You know that something is destined for you and is within your reach, but it's behind the threshold of your spiritual duty and responsibilities to evolve, to ascend, to become mature, to become wise. The homework in relationships. And because of that, we don't prosper. We don't find success. We don't make victory. We can't move forward. And we're constantly attracting people and situations, circumstances that reminds us of the homework that we refuse to do. The same person who we're holding a grudge against, who we can't seem to find a way to forgive, we keep bringing the same experience back into our life over and over again. Somebody's trying to tell you something. South Node Virgo, it's not about working for it to obtain it. It's about aligning to receive it. Understand, your work is piss poor filth. It's piss poor filth. You're arrogant. And you think, oh, I'll ignore that. I ain't worried about all of that. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to take all the classes. I'm going to get the degrees. I'm going to get with these people over here. And I'm going to go to the 10th house and I'm going to get everything that's destined for me. I'm going to be ambitious. No, that's not how this works. Virgo is not at the North Node. Virgo is at the South Node. So please sit your motherfucking ass down. Sit the fuck down and learn. Learn that it's not about physical effort that's going to get you through. What's going to get you through is dealing with that same situation that you're too arrogant to deal with. Mercury is with Venus in its retrograde, Aries, and it's telling you something. Until you make peace you're going to stay right where you at. Until you reconcile, you're going to stay right where you at. Until you let go and release the anger and the resent. Like my grandmother used to say, you as far as you going. You as far as you going. You ain't going nowhere. We move by doing the work, the spiritual work. We make progress by doing the spiritual work. We meet enemies along the way, and the enemies are only reflections of the enemies within. And we have to do that work. And when we do that work, then we move in the timeline. Otherwise, you're going to spin in a circle in the same place, wondering why. You're working hard, but ain't getting nowhere. The funny thing about forgiveness is that we think that we're keeping somebody in prison with our animosity, with our resent, with our anger, with our hate. We think we're keeping that person in our own little prison. But what's ironic about it is that you are keeping yourself in a prison through those same behaviors. And you can't see it. And as you sit in that cell, you still refuse to examine the self. On the other side of forgiveness is setting the self free. Free from attachment to such frequencies and spirits. Forgiveness is an opportunity to step into the spiritual algorithm of Scorpio with oneself. And stepping into the spiritual algorithm of Scorpio with oneself, it means that transformation is being offered, which results in empowerment, personal empowerment. It also has its fruit in resilience, evolving in one's own resilience. With Scorpio, the challenge is acceptance. Scorpio and Pluto, it hurls disillusionment into our life. We start out as judges, legal aides, attorneys for our own experiences throughout life. But the truth is that we are in apprenticeship until we arrive at understanding and compassion, which affords forgiveness. We are only an apprenticeship of judgment, because there's much that we don't see and there's much that we don't understand if we are a person who doesn't know how to forgive. Forgiveness in and of itself has a lot to do with the Scorpio algorithm of spirit. Through Scorpio, we face truths and realities that are disappointing. Truths and realities that reveals things about a person that contradicts the ideal that we have for a person or of a person. I expected this person would be this way. I thought that a person would be that way. But when they behaved in contradiction to my idea of them, I can't seem to find a way to forgive them for how they now have behaved in contradiction to what I wanted to be the truth of who they are. But nonetheless, they are showing you who they are, someone imperfect. And it was you who idealized a perfect person. It was you who set the person on a pedestal. It was you who expected that the person should fulfill all of your dreams and your ideals without error, without let, without refusal. So you're straining yourself with burden that is quite unnecessary. Scorpio teaches us that we have to make room for acceptance of the human. In making room for acceptance of the human, we have to accept that anything that is possible to happen, it will happen, or it could happen at the minimum. You can never put anything past a person because you are not the owner of the person's will. You are not the writer of their journey. You are not the author of their destiny. You did not calculate it. You did not measure it. You did not lay it out. So how are we authorized to say how a person should behave or react or interact unless there is a contract between you and that person that secures that expectation? Understand. Weaknesses, fear, cowardice, lust, greed, it breeds behaviors that causes imbalances and offenses and regrets. And if we can understand that we have the same crisis within the self, we can go very far with understanding that it's time to accept what this person is showing you about their self. And it doesn't mean I have to accept their behavior. It doesn't mean that I have to accept how they affect me or put myself in position for them to continue to affect me in the same way. It simply means I have to let go of my ideal that they should conform to. And I have to honor their freedom to learn their lessons in their life path in the ways that they choose. For them to create their own karma, for them to come to understand and experience their own destiny, and for them to have freedom to react or respond to their fate in whichever way that their heart and soul is inclined. And we cannot take offense to that. Acceptance. But let it inform your boundaries. Let it inform your direct communication for healthy dialogue, discussion, negotiation, reasoning, in order to maintain peace. A relationship is something that has to be maintained. It's not something that you can have negligence about and expectations at the same time. How much are you doing to co-create what you wish or prefer to experience out of the relationships or relationship that you have, where forgiveness seems to be so impossible? What have you been doing to make sure that no rust is spreading in the infrastructure of your relationship, to make sure that it remains healthy, full of oil, that it remains clear and free of contaminants? What do you do to do your portion and your due diligence of maintenance that's required to the relationship? Relationships require maintenance. Have you identified yet where you have committed yourself to maintenance of your relationship? That is between you and your siblings, you and your parents and your children, your aunties, your uncles, your community, co-workers, whoever else. Every relationship requires the understanding that I must maintain this relationship if I am to expect anything out of it. Understand? We want cake, but we don't want to help bake the cake. We want a house, but we don't want to work to have the credit or the financial power to purchase a house. You want a good running vehicle, but you don't want to get the oil change. You don't want to get your tires rotated. You want to look attractive, but you don't want to eat healthy, exercise regularly, get sleep as you need. You see, all of this comes back to Virgo, responsibility. Our desires are infinite. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that nothing will satisfy the desires of the sons and daughters of Adam except the dirt of the grave. We always want. But what are we doing to co-create what we want, the outcome that we desire. If we're not doing something, that's called entitlement. You feel entitled to have peace in your relationship, but you don't work to create or co-create peace. You don't facilitate peace. You don't encourage peace. You don't maintenance towards peace. You want happiness and joy, a pleasant environment, security, but you're not co-creating it. You can expect what you create and co-create. It's not the other person's responsibility solely to manifest the status of any relationship. It is a co-creation. We create the status of this relationship, and we expect what we put in. Now, understand this. We have no excuses. In most cases, reconciliation is better. It doesn't mean that you have to get back on the same terms. It doesn't mean that you have to stand in the same position with the person. But reconciliation is mandatory for the most part. We have to have wisdom and understanding enough to arrive at the conclusion that reconciliation is in our best interests. Because reconciliation, it restores peace and trust. It also opens opportunity for further growth and expansion. It neutralizes enemies that otherwise could be behind you, causing trouble, or you doing the same to the other person out of spite. We have to get good at reconciliation. We have to put forward healthy practices. We may fear reconciliation simply because we don't have the skill of setting healthy boundaries. And setting healthy boundaries is not always to block and delete, cut off, cuss somebody out, so on and so forth. To set healthy boundaries without aggressive language, without disrespect, without overbearance. But to set healthy boundaries with confidence, with boldness, with assertiveness, and a spirit of understanding, compassion, and wisdom, speaking with wisdom. How can we challenge ourselves starting from tonight to lead with wisdom, to use wise words, to articulate with wisdom? How good are you at speaking with wisdom? Not poetry, fancy sayings, talking too much, but using simple, practical wisdom in your delivery. Let's go the other direction than what public opinion and the internet, social media has been encouraging us to do. Walk away, give up, throw our hands in the air. No, relationships are to evolve. And it evolves and gets stronger and healthier, deeper, wiser. The value of it increases as we work through the challenges, the obstacles, the difficulties, the setbacks that are inevitable in every relationship. The bond gets stronger. The trust gets deeper. The wisdom is more sound. Understand? And the unity is more synchronized. We forgot to practice forgiveness and we forgot to practice reconciliation, which is why we don't find ourselves coming back together in a stronger and healthy way after fallouts and imbalances that are inevitable. Reconciliation. Coming back with healthier boundaries. Forgiveness is not about the other person. is about the responsibility that we have to our inevitable assignments. Each experience in every relationship is assigned to you. It's part of your destiny. Every person. What you pass through with your colleagues, with your loved ones, your siblings, your father, your husband, your mother, your children, your neighbors, blood or not, every experience was assigned to you. And it's your responsibility to process it. Struggling to forgive is not a crime. It's not a fault. We're all human, which means we stand between the flesh and spirit, trying to make sense of what's assigned to us. Virgo eclipse most certainly will highlight the themes of responsibility, especially with direct motion Chiron hosting an Aries retrograde of Venus, which carries the themes of our relationships, and Mercury in Aries, which carries the themes of our communications, and how assertive we can learn to be without being aggressive, taking initiative and taking command with our destiny. It's so easy to hold a grudge, and they can last very long. Some grudges and animosity, it lasts entire lifetimes and carries over and passes over into the children that we bear, as we teach the children to help us to hold those same grudges that began when we ourselves were children. And it spreads a corrosion, a rust that eats away at something that was meant to be fortified. Family. We do deserve our time to process. We do deserve our time to grieve, and no one can tell us how to grieve. Nonetheless, it is still an assignment that we have. I'm just curious to know, how are you doing with those assignments? How are we doing with our assignments that are destined for us in our relationships? We all have different thresholds of sensitivity. What hurts one person can traumatize another. What offends one person is nothing but water off the back. We don't reserve the right to say how someone should feel, or for how long they should feel it. We don't have that right. To process one's destiny is something sacred. It's something sacred. Because these themes does rest upon our karma. When we face matters of being challenged, and rather or not it is time to forgive, or rather or not I can afford to forgive. It is certainly karma. And karma, through Saturn, there's a strong expression with the ring of Saturn, and that there are restrictions and limitations to a being who's carrying contamination. If I haven't found the power to forgive, the strength to forgive, the authority to forgive, I carry contamination within my spirit. And that restriction is necessary so that I do not spread that contamination onto those who don't deserve it. So some who could be destined to meet you at certain times, your energy will push them away, as well as opportunities. Because with such frequency, you would only blow it. What we easily forget is why we came to Earth, why we are here. It's so easy to forget why we are here. And the relationships, sum total. To neglect that assignment, our contamination grows. And what gets exposed, what gets revealed in secret or in open, rather we know or not, is the crisis with self. You have yet to learn how to forgive the self. You have not been practicing forgiveness with self. You haven't come to the understanding of what it means to forgive the self. To arrive at such power, to be able to forgive the self, you most certainly can afford from such abundance to forgive others. That is where the capacity comes from. That's where the power of forgiveness comes from. Knowing that I must forgive if God is going to forgive me. And who is that God? It's the higher frequencies and consciousness, power and authority, the mystery of self that sees self and knows self in truth, not in the sweet lies that we love to tell ourselves. The higher self that holds self accountable. The higher self that guides self when we are lost. Oh Allah, I have been unjust to myself. I have wronged myself. Something so simple. You're using the power of your words to make an acknowledgement of your inferiority your potential to practice inferior behaviors. You're acknowledging your inclination to inconsistencies and contradictions within the self. You're acknowledging that you have an appetite for self-destruction, self-oppression behind the astral body and what it craves to experience. You're acknowledging that there are forces within the self that requires management and authority, control, obedience, strength, higher power, or else there could be regrets, there could be shame, there could be losses, complications within the life. You're acknowledging that all it takes is an unexpected event that brings disillusionment to you, where something happens that you didn't want to be true. You didn't want it to be a reality, and you can't accept that it happened, and now you suffer. A truth gets revealed that you didn't want to be true, and you cannot accept that it is true, even though you don't want it to be true. So now you suffer. And this is the worship of our ideals, the worship of our own entitlement, the worship of our ego, and the suffering that it causes when we cannot let go to redeem ourselves through forgiveness. How many times have I spoken in ways that have oppressed or wronged someone else while I knew it, and also while I did not know it? How many times did I take an action and I was unjust to someone while I knew it, and also at times while I did not know it? Even insisting at times to wrong others or be unjust to others. There's not a man or woman alive who doesn't wear this burden. But the difference is who feels it a burden and who doesn't. Who acknowledges it and who pretends as if they have not spoken such, or have they not touched such. Who acknowledges. The moral high horse. I'm better than you. I'm a good person. I'm righteous, dignified. I'm up here. How dare you offend me? How dare you wrong me? How dare you say such? How dare you do such? Who do you think I am, and who do you think you are? Do you want that answer? Do you really want truth to answer that question? It's you. It is you. That person is you looking back at you. That person is you exposing you. And your fingerprints are all over it. Look at you. Pathetic. Cowardly. You can't even forgive. It's because you don't forgive yourself. And you can't forgive yourself because you're too arrogant to acknowledge that you need forgiveness. You're too delusional to acknowledge that you have transgressed with your tongue and with your hand, and you do it every single day. There is never a day that you will walk the earth and interact with a person and not wrong that person. There will never be a day, even if it is in a thought, and the thought is enough because the thought is the seed to all that you have ever witnessed. The thought. This is why we have to search ourselves every night. Search ourselves. I'm Muslim in my upbringing. I don't know what you are in your upbringing, but traditionally what we would say, Astaghfirullah. Astaghfirullah al-Azim. Allah forgive me. Allahumma aghfirli warhamni wahdini warzuqni. Seeking forgiveness for what we know we were wise enough not to do. For what we know we had control of, but we did it anyway. For what we know we insisted to do, even though we understood it was not right or correct. Violating the rights of others, oppressing others, abusing others. Who am I and who are you to say, oh, that little thing? Is it your place to say? Is it your place to measure how much an offense weighs? Is it your place to measure how much it weighs to wrong someone? Is it your place? That little thing? You see, this is where the deception comes in. You think that what you did and you think that what you said, it was insignificant. But that person could have went home with a burden as heavy as a mountain on their back because of what you said or what you've done. Our value is in different places. You may not have valued the weight of your words or actions in interaction with someone else, but that person may have valued what you said or did, and it had significant damage to the person. But in overlooking it in our arrogance, we go to sleep content, paying no mind to it, what we said and what we did. How do we know what trauma we're reawakening? What events this person suffered or experienced in their life? But then when it comes around to someone offending self, someone offending you or wronging you, oh, it's the biggest event of life. It's a catastrophe. It's impossible for me to ever forgive this. Oh, how dare you? Understand that the criterion of judgment that you use, the criterion of judgment that you use to calculate and measure judgment for others is exactly how yours is formulated up on you, and how your karma is measured to meet you. You're the one who decides that, how karma befalls you. It's a reflection of how your karma befalls others. Understand? I have to prolong this. I want so-and-so to suffer because so-and-so made me suffer. I want so-and-so to hurt because so-and-so made me hurt. Here's a painful truth. No one really has power to make us suffer or to make us hurt. Not once we become a conscious individual. And what I'm speaking about is once we have evolved from childhood. No one has that power. And this becomes lessons with self and discovering about self, where your power and authority is at and what you're doing with it. Where is your wisdom? Where is your self-contemplation? Why is it so complicated and difficult to arrive at such understanding? Attaching ourselves to resent, attaching ourselves to animosity, attaching ourselves to anger and bitterness, attaching ourselves to hate, attaching ourselves to division. because we want to be able to witness the person suffer from our intentional actions, the wrath that we are intentionally inflicting upon another. How easily we forget that the only person we are truly harming is ourselves. And this is not only in a metaphysical sense, this is literal. You are subtracting the hours of your days. You are getting closer to death the longer you hold these grudges. You are dying inside. And the diseases will begin to show their head. The ulcers in the stomach, the heart issues, the high blood pressure, the back pains, the skin rashes. It's the forgiveness that you're refusing, tormenting your own body. These assignments and relationships are for you to learn how to evolve the self by finding the power and authority to let go of identifying with pain, identifying with suffering, identifying with anger and resent, identifying with ego. These are exercises and lessons. And nobody gets away with anything. If we really knew the truth about the cause of our own words and actions on a daily basis, we would understand that every person is no different than the self. I can afford to forgive because look how much I need to forgive. Oh, how do you know that? I search my heart every night. I search my heart every night. And I realize how I treated that person, how I talked to that person, how I interacted with that person, and how I had the power and authority not to wrong the person and not to be unjust to the person. Do unto others. When we get to a place in life where we actually care about how we treated others or dealt with others, forgiveness is active within the body, within the being. When forgiveness is active, we become more compassionate and understanding, and that is not a weakness. Compassionate understanding, it's the active of love. And love is what negates fear. Love is what negates fear. And every offense that you have ever suffered from, and every offense that you cause others to suffer from, it only came from fear at the root. We should find humility to first search the self and acknowledge where forgiveness needs to move. And this is in surrendering an attempt to have delusional ideals of the self, of having such a status that is on a moral high horse, that is of a virtue that is better than others. The arrogance and the ego. In doing so, we can make room to congregate and have assembly with all of the forces and beings within the self. These include shadows and light. This includes the darkness and illumination, the good forces and the negative forces, the fear and the love, the demons, and the angels? Where are we going without acknowledging what is within the self? Taking command and mastery of the self has not even begun, because fear is there, ruling and controlling. But yet we want to portray the idea that we have conquered such. No, I don't think so. It's fear why we have not understood forgiveness, because the fear prevents us from addressing and greeting our own demons. When we welcome our demons out, to come out in the full, come out from hiding, and we introduce ourselves as master to these demons. We introduce ourselves as the authority, as the head. We take charge. We manage them. We hold them in submission to our order. And some of them we have to exercise and train to submit to our rule. But none of this is accomplished without the effort, the work, the responsibility, the accountability, the acknowledgement, the going within, showing up for what was assigned through the relationships, due process. Someone hurt your feelings. Someone didn't do what you wanted them to do or how you wanted them to do it. And we charge them with all offenses, but yet so blind to how we co-created the experience that we claim to suffer from. What was your portion in the co-creation of that? What was your part in creating that reality? Oh, it's all the other person. It has nothing to do with you. You are righteous. You are pure. You are holy. Undefiled. Right and exact. Always correct. Well, why do you suffer? Why do you suffer so much that you're afraid to forgive? Why? Why are you afraid to let go of the anger and the resent? Will you be helpless without holding on to it? Will you feel powerless without having an advantage over a person called guilt? Leveraging guilt over a person? Does it make you feel powerless to let it go? You see how cheap you sold your soul for. You see how cheap you have become. Were it not for the person who wronged you, you would have nothing valuable to hold on to. And the only thing that you value in holding on to is pain and grief. You can't find anything else to hold on to. You're like a sewer rat, an alleyway cat who finds filth. Filth in the alleyway, filth in the garbage. Filth on the ground. And you're holding on to it. Putting all your value into what you're holding on to. Because if you let it go, you know you are bankrupt. You have nothing else but pain and grief to hold on to. You have no joy. You have no peace. You have no love. And that's why you hold on to darkness. Because you know your hands are empty. You have nothing. Why don't you have anything? Well, it's quite simple. You have not cultivated value. Cultivation. You have not cultivated value. Cultivation is a fruit of responsibility. Responsibility is the active of accountability. Understand, the self has to be cultivated. And reflection is part of the responsibility to self. And that is how we cultivate. And in reflection, we meet our own demons. And if you meet your demons, it would be intuitive to you that everyone has demons just like you. And everyone is trying just like you're trying. And everyone fails to get it right time and time again. They keep falling, keep missing, keep slipping, keep falling victim and prey to bad habits and addictions, bad behaviors, offenses and vices. Intuitively, you would understand, if you were reflecting on this, that everyone is in the same crisis, which is why there's forgiveness in the first place. You forgive because you accept that this is inevitable. You will always struggle to maintain authority and victory over the self. You get the crown, but you must defend the crown thereafter. And you cannot turn your back on the demons within. Perhaps a person turned their back on their demon, and it caused offense to you. But how do you reason in thinking that you never turned your back on your demon where it ended up offending someone else? Can you not see that you are the person that you're holding a grudge against? And it will only end in your illness, isolation, a slow death, a slow, speedy death. Ironic, isn't it? Forgiveness is something that we have to practice because it's part of the art of maintaining and cultivating relationships. You cannot have healthy relationships without forgiveness. You cannot practice forgiveness with others without practicing forgiveness with the self. You have to practice the art of forgiveness with the self, accepting that Chiron transit. The Chiron transit is forever. As long as you live, Chiron will be traveling. Chiron will always be active as long as you are alive. It will go from house to house, from sign to sign, Chiron. And Chiron will reveal where you are weak, where you are imperfect, where you are flawed, where you can't seem to get it right, you can't get it together. You're fucking up. You're ass backwards. You're upside down. You're confused. But you keep trying. Chiron is the root of what gains us insight into forgiveness. You look at how pathetic you are, how hard you try, how much effort you put into showing up better, improving yourself, getting it right. Once you become a person who finally cares about it, you're actively attempting to improve. And that Chiron shows you no matter what you do, you are going to be imperfect. No matter what you do, you're going to have a weak spot. You're going to have something to hide. Forgiveness for self is how you compensate. I accept that I will never be perfect in this way. I accept that I will not be as good as other people when it comes to this. I accept that I have a lot to learn, that I have to be a lifetime student to get this right. I accept that today I'm doing good, but I know one day I'm going to need to ask for help. If you would do the work to search yourself, to arrive at these conclusions night after night, day after day, practicing that acceptance of the imperfect self, not in the spirit of negligence, but in the spirit of responsibility and accountability. I have this addiction. I have this habit. I have this terrible behavior about myself. I have this trigger. And it sets me back every time. There's something about every one of us with that Chiron. We don't want anybody to know about it. It's the thorn in the side that just won't go away. So how? How do we conclude that we cannot afford forgiveness when forgiveness is essential for the self? How do we practice forgiveness with the self and find ourselves incapable of forgiving others? Others are frequencies of the self, colors of the self that are reflected back to the self. It's you looking back at you in a particular way. And you hate yourself so much you can't forgive. Bankrupt. It's impossible to have relationships for years and months, weeks, but you never had to say, I apologize. I wronged you. I was unjust to you. I was unfair to you. I mistreated you. I apologize. Look over your relationships. Examine them. When have you ever had a relationship with anyone, today or yesterday, but you never apologize? If you ever had relationships where you never apologize, you have wronged that person. Because it's impossible for you not to have reason to apologize. It's absolutely impossible. The higher our frequency of consciousness, the more we realize what there is to apologize for. And it's not about being sorry. It's about acknowledging that someone deserves a better treatment, that a person deserves respect and honor, dignity. Why? Because that's what I expect for self. I have to treat others the way that I want to be treated. I cannot ask others to treat me in a way that I am not treating them. Treat me this way, treat me that way. That's not something you can request by what you say. You request by demonstration of how you treat yourself. When you're dealing with a person who's very respectful, humble, very sensitive about how they hold and interact with your property, or how they hold and interact with you, that's a person that expects much respect. You see, we got it the wrong way. We're looking at it the wrong way. A fool will think that that's a weakness. A fool will think that that's a weakness. A man who's always talking respectful, respecting everyone's property and everyone's person, treating people with kindness and dignity. Excellent mannerism. That's a dangerous person. Because the person is telling you, by showing you, you better respect me. See, we are not wise enough to read higher communication. We're not wise enough to pick up on higher communication because it's not something that you tell somebody to do. It's somebody that you demonstrate, knowing that they understand that this is what's to be done, because inevitably that's how I treated you. I respected you, so you should respect me. It's setting up the plot too. I'm going to respect everybody in here, because if one person disrespect me, it's on. I'm fucking niggas up. Yeah, that's how it go. You ever observed a person's mannerism who's been in prison for a long time? In prison is a place where men have exclusivity, and the law among men is respect. Respect is the highest value among men. A person who did many years, who did many bids in prison, their mannerism, they lead with respect, always. That's because they are insisting that you respect them. But some people are foolish enough to mistake that for weakness or kindness. No, that's not what that is. The person's telling you, if you don't treat me with the same respect, I'm fucking you up. I'm getting in that ass. It's on. That's what that's saying. And a lot of people fuck around and find out. A person who walks around wanting to inflict pain and misery upon someone for a transgression, thinking that they have the power for vengeance, when God said, vengeance is mine. Vengeance is mine. That means you have to forward vengeance to the highest frequency that you can reach for. And the greatest vengeance is to forgive, to pardon, to free yourself from attachment and involvement with such frequency as what came from that person, so that you do not befall the fate that is headed to that person. Because you will get consumed in the same karma, because you're at the frequency of the same one you're holding a grudge against, because that's where it started at. So now you will become the same person who you're holding a grudge against. And what you're sending out of animosity will continue to come back to you. You're destroying yourself. Venus retrograde, in light of the Virgo eclipse, let's work on forgiveness, starting with the responsibility to search the self and to hold the self accountable, to acknowledge about the self where there are weaknesses and imperfections, where there are unhealthy habits, impurities, contamination, faulty character, inconsistencies, oppression, injustice. All of this is in every person. And you can look at your 12th house to find most of it. Understand? It's not about the other person to forgive. It's acknowledging you are just like me. You were created the same way that I was created. And if I'm going through this to be a good person, I know you're going through the same thing to be a good person, from the way that you have to be a good person. We all have to learn how to be good persons. And it's a struggle. But if that's not what you're striving for, you can't relate to that. You're more sensitive to a person trying to get it together. You're less interested in giving grace when you're not in position to give yourself grace for your own shortcomings, because you're not in the habit of searching yourself. You're an arrogant son of a bitch. Narcissistic. You think you don't have to search yourself. That's like wearing dirty ass drawers every day. You get up every day and wear the same dirty ass drawers, putting on perfume and cologne. That's the same thing. A person who refuses to forgive is like a person that walks around with shitty ass drawers, the same drawers every day. You take a shower and you put the same funky ass drawers on. That's what you're doing. You carrying that funky ass shit around. You're nasty. And you stank.